asked me here recently, how did you get started? What did you do? And within a couple hours of that conversation, somebody else asked a little bit different, but it's a very different conversation. They said, "How can I do what you're doing right now?" Two very different questions. How do you get started? And then asking somebody who's now doing powerlifting and bodybuilding competitions, how do I jump into that right this minute, right? You don't want to jump so far that you try to bite off more than you can chew. In a lot of cases, that won't last. The other question's better is how did you get started? Initially I just made some changes. I just decided, I'm gonna eat what I'm eating, what I'm used to, but I'm just going to eat less of it. And so I started with portion control. I'm not going to allow myself to get full. I'm just going to eat until I'm not hungry. And I just started changing some little things. I'm going to drink only water. I'm going to cut out anything else. I'm going to avoid sugar. And so just these little changes. I find myself eating, a hamburger and fries, and then just throwing it away before I ate it all. And end up with a third of the hamburger left and a third of the fries left and dump it out. And then after a little while of doing that and feeling a little bit better and seeing some progress and starting to see a mind shift change to some different ways of thinking, then you start thinking, well, gosh, if I'm going to go through all this, I might as well really do it right. And so then you start changing, well, let's stop eating the hamburger and French fries, so often. I know I scared you. I said, let's stop eating hamburger and French fries, and I got a few of. So how about not so often? Okay, does that work? And so you just start making changes, and then I stepped it up and made other adjustments, and then you continue to move in the right direction. And when the major areas of your life are congruent, when they're all built on the same principles and values, it feels so much better. And so what are those major areas of life? I talk mostly about 4 indispensable areas of business planning or goal setting, but there's really a 5th that I want to make sure I absolutely highlight that has made a big difference for me. But number 1 is faith, and then you've got family, and then you've got fitness and finance, the 4 F's. And then the 5th one that you need to make sure you add in there is fun. Because if you're not careful, you're going to burn yourself out and you're not going to do things that are enjoyable. And maybe you could have that 5th category and really have it up in and of its own. Or maybe you could just make sure you add the element of fun to each one of those categories. What do I enjoy doing in each one of those areas, and what are my goals to make sure I stop and smell the roses? Because sometimes it's easy for life to get overwhelming, and you got to take a step back and say, okay, what am I going to do to just enjoy life and feel good about things and sort of disconnect? Go on a cruise. Let's go to Cabo. We're doing that here soon, right? And so make sure you're considering some things. What you bring about is what you think about, and so you've got to really consider, what am I thinking about most of the time? What is my mind occupied with? And if I could stop myself and occupy my mind with something more positive, with more direction, how would that affect my life? I've also always, I've said this for quite a while, I believe goal setting to be the secular equivalent of prayer. So what I mean by that is, for those that have a faith life in here, or practicing, maybe the standard of praying on a consistent basis, if you talk to a lot of people, they would suggest that you pray when?
Morning and night.
Morning and night. Oh, just woke up, Jace. So you pray morning and night. One bonus question for Jace. So
Thanksgiving.
so just Thanksgiving. So most people will say that you should pray morning and night. I mean, a lot of faiths would kind of connect with that thought process. Well, you wake up and you get centered on, just last night, we were talking about, as a family, we were talking about the elements of prayer, right? And you start with addressing your Father in heaven, then you spend time thanking for the things that you're grateful for, and then you ask for things that you're in need of or help of or for blessings, and then you close in the name of the Savior. And going through those simple elements, you can also relate a lot of this to the elements of goal setting. Essentially, are you calling on some type of higher power? Are you having some faith in something that's not seen but that you hope is true? Are you exercising that faith through some verbal command and some mental focus? Certainly the prayer side has got these commonalities with the goal setting. You should probably focus a significant amount of your time and energy on what you do have and what you're grateful for, and not just what I don't have, and having an attitude of entitlement or incompleteness necessarily. Setting goals is one of striving and trying to develop and change. And then asking is putting that out there and saying, these are the things that I'm calling into existence, that I'm intentionally striving for. These are important elements, but also the side of doing this twice a day, morning and night. If you read your goals in the morning, now you have an opportunity to consciously focus on these efforts throughout the day, and it's a great way to start positively. If you read your goals in the evening or prior to going to sleep, now your mind has the ability to subconsciously work on these things in your sleep. Our mind is much more powerful than we think it is. And the reality about parts of our brain is that there are parts of our brain that don't know how to distinguish between what we tell it and what is reality, what is happening. So when we speak these things consistently, morning and night, we're actually reprogramming parts of our brain to believe that this is reality. So this is another key element to goal setting. When you set goals, you need to write them in a way that they are verbalized in present tense. So a lot of times people will develop goals and then they'll pass them to me and say, hey, can you read these and tell me what you think of these goals? And one of the things that I see commonly done wrong is somebody says things like, I will have more money in savings. There's so many things wrong with that. First of all, you have to, when you say I will, what kind of tense is that?
Future.
That's future tense, right? So you're saying I will, you're basically telling yourself I don't have, and I'm not, and you're being so general in terms of time frame that your mind doesn't know how to bring that into current, right? And so part of the initial battle is saying I have, right? And speaking that in a way as if you have already obtained it is helpful to many people in terms of acquiring those things. By just speaking in terms of already possessing such goals. So, another problem with the statement is that there's no specific number attached to it. You can't say, I will increase my emergency savings. You need to be very specific. The higher the level of detail and specificity that there is to a goal, the more likely that it will be acquired. And one of the reasons why is because your mind can absolutely invest itself in that goal because you painted a clear picture. So those parts of your mind that are able to reason and rationalize through things is more of your conscious mind, right? The the other part of your brain is the more natural man, which is the instinctual side that doesn't really reason and go through that process. You have to tell it very directly what you're trying to accomplish and paint that picture as clearly as possible. The more clear, realistic, and present these goals are, the more likely that your mind can invest itself completely in that process. What you believe, you can't achieve. You will not be able to believe something in its entirety if it is a generality. Does that make sense to everyone? Say yes.
Yes.
So you have to get very specific about what exactly I'm trying to call into my life and then detail it out. So faith, family, fitness, finance. What's the last one? Fun. So developing some of these things so that you spend more time thinking about these positive objectives than you do about, some of the hardships or some of the negatives. I think ultimately reading your goals morning and night has a way of reprogramming us so that we become more of a cup half full mentality instead of a cup half empty. Because we fix our minds on solutions and objectives and positive, direction. And so how good are you at doing this? And by the way, the other major equivalent that this has to prayer is if you prayed for something in the morning, and then you prayed for it in the night, and then you did it in the morning and the night, in the morning and the night, in the morning and night, day in and day out, week in and week out, and it didn't come to fruition immediately, would you stop believing in God? Would you stop focusing on the need that exists to have that thing change? Probably not. But for some reason, when it comes to goal setting, we have less patience for calling these things into existence and focusing on these things as a priority in our lives. Does that make sense? So you have to persist and not give up faith that you can acquire these objectives. To an extent, there is a section on faith. So this is an organized focus on even bringing some of these faith objectives into reality. But even with prayer, I'll point this out as well. Many believe, from a spiritual standpoint, that when you pray to God for assistance, there is a couple of major elements that have to be in play in order for it to happen. One is I can't just kneel down and say, hey, I need this to happen, and then just wait, twiddle your thumbs. God, where is it? Right? What has to happen?
Take some action.
Yeah, you have been blessed in the first place by your Creator with gifts and talents and abilities. And so it's incumbent upon you to actually express those talents and gifts and skills to their greatest degree in order to bring about these realities to the highest of your abilities, and then He will make up the difference, right? But you don't just pray and then lay down, curl up in a ball, and then wait, right? You're supposed to do all you can do within your capacity, because in and of itself, that is already part of the objective of accomplishing the objective, is that He's given you the ability to do it. And what you're asking for is some help and assistance in that, right? So we don't expect to just set goals and then sit around. We set goals, we read those goals, and even if you haven't stepped up in your action, don't lose faith. Continue to put those goals out there day in and day and night, and don't lose faith in that process. Continue to strive for that objective. And there'll be days when you think to yourself, man, this isn't going to happen for me. And I don't want to read these goals anymore because it's not taking place. It's also said in terms of prayer that the time when I should pray the most is when I feel it the least. How many of you believe that to be true? So anybody can do the right thing when they're feeling it, when it feels good and it feels motivating and you feel inspired. But do you do the right thing when you don't feel like it? That's the key. It's what I do when no one's watching. And if you're like me, you've made the mistake in your life maybe many times of not doing the right thing when no one's watching. What really defines us is what we do when there's no accountability and nobody's watching as far as we can tell. But ultimately, part of faith is believing that someone's always watching. Same thing with goal setting. You might think, well, I'm not doing what I should be doing right now, but no one's watching. But who will know? You
You know.
and your Creator, that I'm not living to the fullest expression of my ability, right? And so setting these plans are important to this whole process. Be very specific, exactly where you're headed, exactly how you're going to get there, specific dates. So perhaps a better way to set that goal about increasing my emergency planning is I have 6 to 12 months of emergency money of $36,000 to $72,000, whatever that range of numbers is, very specific, right? And so stating these things with some exact clarity, again, the more specific, the more likely you are to get there. There's some other elements. There's another element to goal setting that I think is absolutely critical, and that is you need to have a section for your why. Or within each section, it would be important to have a section for your why. And what I mean by your why is some affirmations and some reasons. I love this statement. You'll find out how if you have a strong enough why. If you want it bad enough, you'll figure out how. And so what are your specific reasons why you have to succeed in these areas, right? And so I like having an entire affirmation statement, just a positive statement that inspires and motivates me, where I speak some positive truth into my existence a couple of times a day. You know, I've also said before, some of you heard this before, you know, when I was first getting started at the gym, you know, the hardest part for me was cardio. Anyone hate cardio? or ab work? And so I got to the point where I was trying to step it up, and I was doing, you know, this was many months ago, that I decided I'm going to do cardio and abs 7 days a week. Well, that was a mental. The first battle was mental, and so my first thought process was, how do I make this into a process that doesn't feel like such a battle or such drudgery? So one of the things that I did was, while I was doing cardio, I was repeating positive affirmations. Now, after many months of doing that, it just doesn't seem like, it just seems like it's the reality, and it's not as much of a battle. So I would say things to myself like, I love this. You know, one of the things I've said to my kids, been a motto at our house forever, is we love doing hard things. And so I say, I love doing hard things, you know, and just repeating these positive things in your head, but also on occasion pulling out your actual goals in your business plan and reading those while you're doing that. So stay focused on those. And then you could even have some type of a game plan in there. One of the things I've done often is broke down every month of the year into some objectives. You know, how much am I going to earn? How much am I going to save? Is there a specific family trip we're going to go on but I'm going to attach that to some goals? And there's been times in my life where I've said to my kids, hey, you know, we're going to go to, I remember once specifically, we're going to go to Newport Beach in California, and we're going to go to all the theme parks. We're going to stay, at a great place, but only if Daddy does this. So I set a specific goal. And that goal was like 6, 7, 8 months out. And I started hearing about that goal every day. Hey, did you do your goal the next day? Right? And this was a goal that was beyond anything I'd ever accomplished. And then the kids are like, hey, have you hit that goal yet? The very next day, I'm like, it's going to take a minute. But then the next day, hey, have you done it yet? And I hit it, and we went and accomplished that and stayed there. In fact, we brought others with us and that were part of the business and helping to get that goal done. So if you have a big enough why, you'll find out how. A lot of people think the struggle to accomplishing big goals and objectives, a lot of people think the challenge is, well, I don't know how. I don't know what to do. You hear people say it all the time. The how and the what is way less relevant than the reasons why. The why is the fuel that will carry you to where you need to go. The what and the how is incredibly less relevant to the big picture. So you've got to just really define what's so important that I have to do this. Here's an example of one of my whys, and this is very specifically driven towards my business and my specific, this was something that I said years ago. So this gives you an example for those of you who are still looking to develop and build. This takes me back a little bit. So this one says, this is the year my family's been waiting for. And notice that almost all of this ends with an exclamation point. When you're reading it, it's also suggested, if you read Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, page 36 talks about these 6 points in developing some goals and a game plan. One of the things that's talked about is reading it out loud with passion, and is it as if you've already obtained it. So this is why, or important to keep in mind when you're reading this, is seeing that I'm reading this out loud. Some people like to do it in their shower and read it out loud with a cold shower to wake up the body and soul. And so I've often suggested laminating your goals and hanging them in the shower, keeping copies of them in multiple places, one on your nightstand, the book you're reading, your scriptures, on the mirror, hanging in the shower, in your car. I've got one in my pocket right now. I carry one on me all the time in my wallet. So this is the year my family's been waiting for. This is the year it all changes. My life is not about potential, but success. This is happening because I practice winning principles, behaviors, and habits. I do not fight the law of averages. I avoid discouragement and desperation by working hard consistently. I lead from the front by focusing on doing 2 to 3 personal associates and 16,666 in production per month. That is why I'm among the top 10 personal recruiters and producers in the Peterson Financial Group. I am relentless and tenacious. I drill for skill, focus, and build leaders. I am my family's hero. I believe the rewards at the top will be better than I can imagine and worth more than the price I will pay. Winning is my choice. I choose to win now and forever. We are a 1 million point based shop. And so, again, some very important things at that point in my life that were very directly related to where I was at and what I needed to accomplish. And so you need to try to articulate, and it'll be sloppy for a little bit. I mean, initially, it's going to feel disjointed. It's going to feel clumsy. It's not going to feel like it flows very well. This will take some work to develop up to a point where you feel like it resonates with you. I would say that a lot of people get discouraged with their goals because it doesn't flow and it doesn't seem like it's really there. Well, that's because you probably haven't really discovered what's important to you yet. I think for a lot of people it could take a couple of years to really define the goals and do enough searching internally to find out what's so important that you have to accomplish it. So that's why it's important to read these goals, because in some cases you'll read parts of the goals and you go, oh, that really hits me, right? Or in some cases you'll read a part of your goal and you get the chills and a feeling of warmth comes over you. Maybe that's because you nailed it. But other parts seem distant. They seem to lack some real clarity. And maybe that's because you need to work on that part of those goals. But if you're not reading them twice a day and working on them, you're not ever going to work through that process and really get something where the entire thing resonates with you. But it's also going to change as your life changes. Different things are going to become more important than other things, and you're going to as you change in your life, you're going to realize that some things are more important to you now than what was important to you a year or two ago or 5 years ago. Any questions so far?
No, the thing I want to point out, Michael, is that it's a lot more than just writing a couple things down on a piece of paper. Just even this last 40 minutes has been an introduction. And I know you're not looking for praise, but it's been really good because it's not just writing your goals out and then reading them. There's a lot more to it than that. And so I appreciate you taking the time to go over the reasons why we need to do what we're doing instead of just, let's just write out some goals today.
Thank you, and you're welcome. Go ahead.
So that's kind of like the nature, kind of like when you're young and stuff, and you're like finding what you really care about. I'm kind of in that situation. I know you started a business young, and like it's like a big push for you to be like a hot shot, for you to make money, you to get girls, for you to like go on in the world.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like where I'm at.
Yeah.
And it feels like I have this pressure to like be inward on myself, but at the same time being in the business where I have to help other people. Like,
right.
How did you come like apart with stopping, kind of not thinking so much about yourself, but finding something to care about that really push you?
See, that's a great question. So part of it is writing these goals of and telling yourself who you want to become. It's not who you believe you are now, it's who you want to be. So if I read you my affirmations now, compared to this one that was a few years ago, you would see some very clear differences. So along the lines of what you just said, I'll read for you one of the different statements that's in my goals, and you'll see a difference in one of these statements that's along the lines of what you're talking about. So the question again is, how do I develop a mentality where I come more outside of myself and I'm focused on helping others? And I've always believed that if you help enough people get what they want, you'll get what you want, right? And so I think that's key. And people can see right through it. If you're selfish and you're doing it for you and it's about money and they're an object of your desire or your objective, then people will see right through that and they won't trust you and they won't want to be in business with you. And so if you're sincerely wanting to do what's right for other people, that will come around in a very, very positive way. So for instance, here's a statement that's different that you didn't see there. In my current goals, it says, I invest in people and their dreams. I develop leaders. I believe, I'm most importantly full of charity and humility. Now you hear that and you go, well, that's not very humble. He's bragging that he's full of charity and humility. No, these are things that I know are within my capacity. And in some cases, I know that I'm at my best when those are my focuses. And I know that there are times where I'm outside of those focuses and it's not my best. Last night I went to, I was a judge at a debate for younger folks, and several hours, and I was supposed to also critique and give an evaluation of how they presented and areas where they could improve and areas where they did well. One thing that I noticed was a big element was when kids got up and just spouted out facts, it was somewhat impressive. But when somebody learned how to speak to the heart and spoke with a level of sincerity, it was so much more engaging as the person, as the audience. And I believe that it kind of goes through somewhat of what we talked about this morning. Initially, you start awkward, and then things become mechanical when you memorize things and you're learning material and you're gaining knowledge. But over time, when you continue to practice and practice and practice, then things become more natural. And so what you're seeing in most cases with the kids who performed at very high levels was it wasn't their first rodeo. And so for you, you'll have to just, initially, it's going to feel awkward. But then you're going to commit to these things and it'll seem a little bit more mechanical and rigid, but it'll become natural as you continue to work through, what's important to you and let it get more in your heart than it is in your mind. Another one is this. I measure my value by how I serve others and how I make people feel. I'm a magnetic personality. All I am, all I do, and all I have is because my Father in heaven blessed me with it. Excellence is my choice. I choose to be excellent in all things today and forever. So you can see even an evolution in just some years from that affirmation to this one. I just read you a couple pieces of it, but it definitely transitions more away from the monetary as you work hard and bring some of those things into your reality, and it focuses more on the intangible things and the difference, right, that you make.
How long did it take you just to get to that one, for that goal setting for yourself?
Well, that one that I just showed you was about 10 years after writing goals. But it still looked somewhat similar to what I started with, because at some point I started with the foundation and then just polished it and built on it. Where I'm trying to help you guys is you can borrow some of the stuff that I use, but then it won't really resonate. It won't really connect with you, and you'll feel that because it's not entirely yours.
Yeah.
But over time, what I've written could be yours. It just really depends on you and what's important to you. So you could literally get to a point, quoting McConkie, where you say, these words are mine. It's as if I have spoken it. But in other ways, even though they aren't your original words, but they've now become a part of what's important to you and what moves you most, right? Or that's just a foundation, and over time, you tweak it a little bit and you adjust a little bit, and it might end up being like the telephone game, where it goes through several, moments, and eventually it's nothing like what it started, but you have to start somewhere. So I'm trying to give you a rough draft, and hopefully that puts you ahead of the game instead of having to just invent it all on your own and, that type of thing.
Yeah, I feel like it's at the awkward stage right now for me. Because I feel like as a parent, if you've been solely a parent for so long, in the sense of that's all you've been doing for say the last 8-9 years,
Yeah.
But you were something before that. I think you tend to change. You fall out of what you were before. So I was like the business person before, and then I became the parent for so long. So now I'm back to the awkward stage where I'm like, is that really weird for me to set goals for myself now? Because I'm so worried about their goals.
Right.
So I'm like, where do I start now?
No, I got
For
you.
myself.
It's a process. It's a growing process. So you just have to keep moving forward in the right direction. In personal and family, you may want to consider spiritual, mental, physical, emotional elements. Here's some ideas. In some cases, I edited some of those things just a little bit, because some of it's personal. But this gives you a basic idea of some of the goals that I had many years ago, in personal and family. So I had a weight loss goal. In this case, lose 25 pounds by May 31st through 5 days a week of exercise and watching what I eat. And you take these things into more of a specific thing. You could, as I evolved further, that goal eventually said more like, that's more future tense. So eventually the goal evolved to, I am 190 pounds of lean muscle, I feel good, and I am strong, you know, and so you have some things like that. So you can state these things in ways that evolve and move forward. I study my scriptures daily for at least 15 minutes at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. is how that's evolved now. Though the time time of the day is different. Personal and family prayer, morning and night, and specific times. A wake-up time. One of the things that I've noticed is, you know, if you're forced to get up at a certain time because you have a job, you definitely build some very unhealthy mentality, some unhealthy beliefs, core beliefs about sleep and wake-up time and control of your life. But when you work for yourself and you set your own life and your own schedule and your own time, I found myself many years ago waking up very late. In some cases, you know, 9:30, 10 o'clock, and though in your mind maybe you think, oh, hey, that's me exercising control over my existence. The fact is, it never felt good. And so as I began waking up earlier and earlier and earlier, I felt a greater sense of control over my life. And to me now it feels better to get up earlier. Some people hear that and go, you're nuts. You know, you should sleep in. But exercising control over your existence and starting out early feels good and allows you to get more done in your day. And then in that case, it probably makes it more fun when occasionally you just sleep in, instead of it being, you know, something you abuse or do on too consistent of a basis. Getting to church early, and you see some specific family goals in there, family time, and then a vacation goal with some attached things to it. And you see some specific dates on some of those goals. Yep.
I've been trying to work on the morning routine, of like waking up early and kind of having more of a gym routine and waking up more consistently on my own basis. Have you created a schedule for yourself to go to bed at a certain time? Because I feel like a lot of times what keeps me from waking up extra early is because I'm working on things late into the evenings. So how does that kind of change for you as well, like the nightly schedule now? Because if you're out in the field or getting home late, how's that kind of taking in, making a change or waking up earlier now?
Yeah, there is some times where I'm getting, just due to circumstances, I'm getting, you know, 5 hours of sleep, which is not a healthy standard over time. But, you know, for the most part, I try to think ahead and say, hey, you know, I need 7 hours of sleep. You know, I need to make sure that I'm resting appropriately. Some people feel like they absolutely have to have 8 to function. The reality is there's a ton of arguments out there for how much sleep people need. I've read a ton of stuff that said between 5 and 8 is, you know, where you need to be. But I try to, if I can, and I don't have, you know, I know if I push myself and how I'm feeling, and I'm sort of mindful of my health and how I feel, sometimes it'd be late at night and I'll say, you know, I've got my alarm set for 4:30 in the morning, but it's 1 o'clock, and I do have some flexibility in my morning, so I'm going to give myself 7 hours of sleep, you know, or I'm going to give myself 6 hours of sleep. and feel better about it. I mean, last night's one of those times, I think I went to bed at 1:30, and then up this morning at 7:30. So that's not, and it's gonna be a long day today. I knew I was coming here, and then I know I got things with my kids, and then we have our Christmas benefit tonight. Hopefully, many of you are planning on coming. We're gonna help a ton of families for Christmas. But yeah, so I try to manage rest time. Rest time is an important part of the health equation, so hopefully that's helpful. But at the same time, I've heard very successful people say before, if you want to get more done, sleep less. So, John?
Probably 40 years, I slept like 4 or 5 hours,
Yeah.
lots of times less than that, so.
Yeah. I've heard many successful people say that they do 5 or 6 hours. That's kind of their deal, just because the importance of getting done what they need to get done, their goals, taking care of their family, their objectives they have, are simply of such high priority that they function with less sleep because they need to get these things done, taken care of, things that need to happen. Go ahead, Chris.
But you have to sleep faster.
You have to sleep faster. Make sure you sleep
More
faster.
fast.
Get it done for.
Listen, this was one of those mornings for me. Yesterday I had gym time, and then I had a soccer game. I was feeling ripped, and then I was at that debate judging for, I think, 4 or 5 hours, and then got home late, and then the kids want to do stuff, and so we did, some treats and laughed and watched Elf, and didn't make it through that whole ball game, but the 5-year-old did. And then who's up first in the morning? The 5-year-old, bouncing around, and so and then knowing you're coming into a very long day where you're going to be, running all day long, but the objectives of the day, the goals that you have, become more important. Have you ever noticed that if you get up early on just a regular day because you have to, that you feel exhausted, but on a day where you get up early because you have something fun to do that you want to do, you almost can't sleep, and you wake up early and you just have all this energy? You ever notice that? It just goes to show you that it's a mental game. It's all in the way you think. So a long while back, I just engaged myself in some very positive goals that made it more important for me to get up early and do those goals than it was to get caught up in, I need, 8 hours of sleep. So, something to consider in terms of where you're at. Business and finance, you should have some hours of operation, line in the sand goals, and go for it goals. Line in the sand goal is sort of a minimum, like, I'm drawing the line in the sand, I will do no less than this, period. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. This will be, my blood is on this deal. I'm gonna get it done no matter what. And a go for it goal is something that's gonna stretch you. So in a lot of cases, I found it helpful to have a range of goals. Like, I'm gonna earn between $450,000 and $600,000, or I'm gonna save between $150,000 and $200,000, or I'm gonna get so a range of goals is helpful. Depending on where you're at, that range will be set. But I would suggest setting a range of goals instead of just one single specific goal. And not that you let yourself off the hook, but you're absolutely setting a standard of the minimum, but then you're shooting for that bigger goal every day. Promotion goals, cash flow, savings, specific numbers on activity and results. So like, here's an example of some goals I had many years ago. So you can kind of see some of these very specific goals. I believe this was, I want to say like 2007-ish, 2006. So over 10 years ago. But this put me at about 6 or 7 years into the business I'm in. Now at 20. Game plan, different elements there. So a lot of cases I would list out very specific goals for production and building monthly. And then if you get 3 or 4 months into the year, depending on if you're ahead or behind or where you're at, then you reset these goals. And your goals should be tattered, you know, and notes in them and stuff crossed out and new goals written in the margins. And then, you know, if they're all handwritten, that's, you know, that's great. But I usually type mine up and then I'll make adjustments and notes, and then every once in a while I'll retype them up with those new notes. Just the last few months of the year.
Can you go back to it?
So these are the types of goals I was setting when I was pre-6-figure consistency, you know, when I was trying to get consistently into multiple 6 figures. So most of you, this is where you're at. So if you're trying to get into a new world of maybe 200,000, 300, 400,000 range, and you've been consistently in the, you know, 100,000, you know, range or below, then this is kind of where I was at the time. If you're wondering. All right, so in terms of what we ought to focus on right now, what I'm going to do is go back, and for the next 15 minutes or so, I'm going to go back to the beginning of this, and what I'm going to recommend you do is I'm just going to give you some time. Here's my why, and so I'm just going to give you some time to work on your why, work on your affirmation, and if you have questions during this time, raise your hand or come up to me, but I'm just going to give you like 4 or 5 minutes for each section and just a chance to work on them while we're here so you make some actual progress. So for right now, I'm going to set the timer, and let's give you a few minutes to work on your why. And then again, if you have questions, spout them out, raise your hand, let's have a conversation, and then we'll move on to the next section. Of positive statements that'll help reinforce some of your goals. I just have a completely different section, because you can do it a lot of different ways, but I just have it broke down into 4 different sections. So this is my why, my affirmations. And then I've got a separate section for business and finance, personal and family, or spiritual and family, faith and family.
Did you tie in the game plan with the very bottom right?
Yeah, this is the game plan.
What were the other, it was that top right one on the top. And then the bottom was business.
Anybody wanna read one? What you have, or a sentence or two, or the whole thing? Bueller? Okay, Dylan?
I'm the example to Audrey and Hoyt. My success gives them the life they deserve. My success fulfills my dreams and goals. I know that through helping others fulfill their goals, I can fulfill my own. I know and understand that things happen for me, not to me. My strength mentally allows me to succeed and outperform others. The struggles and hard things in life give me strength and purpose.
Awesome. Great.
Just that I will always do more than what I expect for myself. You always think that you can, oh, I'll just do this much, but then wholeheartedly, you really, you could probably do more.
I would have had 5 instead of 4. I think you could have done 5 kids at once.
Yeah, I did 7, I thought that I said 4.
Before,
I was actually 6, so I did it,
yeah,
sorry.
but you were an underperformer because you only did 4 at once.
Yeah, and I did 6 at once actually, and then I ended up with 4. Sorry, I smoked that one.
Yeah,
I actually,
I don't think you're gonna really.
you're an overachiever.
yeah,
think
like
you're
my
gonna
sister
make
had, yeah, my sister had 2, I said, I'm having 4. Oh, sorry, I had 6.
Nice.
I blew her up.
How come you only had 1 at a time?
15 years apart.
Hey, I know how that is, my oldest is 23, and you know, I have the 4-year-olds.
4 4-year-olds.
Having kids for 20 years.
Wow. I think you should just lay down right now, and I would recommend 8 hours of sleep.
That would be nice.
You're never getting it.
Good luck.
100% first year of their life, 45 minutes a night.
Yeah, I bet.
I was like, I don't even know. I don't
Oh my-
remember that first year.
Yeah.
That was rough. But now I get 4 and I'm like, dude, I'm doing good.
Yeah. Personal and family. So, if you want, you can keep this more simple and just do like a faith and family separate. But I coupled them together. Sort of faith, family, fitness. And, cause some people do this way too, it's another way to think about it. You could have a more elaborate set of goals where the document is a few pages and you get into very detailed work on each one. But I like having, even if you do it that way, I like having one that's more cliff notes that I can read in a couple of minutes. So the one that you see me carrying is me trying to condense it and do something that's easy to read on the go. Because I know that I'm not likely to read a 4 or 5 page document twice a day, but I know that I'm more likely to read a 1-page one more consistent. So this kind of gives you a couple of formats. So work on the, maybe work on the faith one on your own time, maybe the fitness one. I gave a hour-long training on nutrition and fitness last Saturday. That was in our IFL class. Because it was requested by the group that I spent some time talking about fitness and nutrition. Who would like to have some training on specifics of how to improve in those areas? Would anyone like that in a training? Try to raise their hands. Okay. So we could look to cover that on a Saturday before the end of the year.
So do you put fitness on this category as well then?
I did in the past. I would, this area, personal/family, was fitness, faith, and family. But some people like separating them out.
You wanna do fun in there too?
Yeah, there's some fun in there, as you can see. There's a trip to Disneyland and but I've also in my plan today, for me, You know, fun would incorporate some weekly stuff too, and some monthly stuff, not just one big event that's 6-7 months out. So, when I first started in the business, I was working 6 days a week, and Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday was the same. I come home sometimes for a little bit of dinner from 3 to 5 or 4 to 6, but I was just, you know, on it consistently. Saturday was 7 a.m. till about 3 p.m. and then Sunday was nothing. Thursday was different because that was the night of our BPM. So what I would do on Thursday was I wouldn't start working until about 1 p.m. So I had a block of time from morning until about 1 that was just for personal time, and I would almost every week I'd go golfing during that morning and just do something to decompress. Now I get quite a bit of decompression out of the gym, you know, but I also need to add, my goal is to add some of that back in there in 2020 to, I'll set aside some time each week, even if it's just for a couple hours. I used to religiously do 18 holes and that was it. Like, you know, yeah, if you don't do 18 holes, you're not golfing. And now I seldom do 18 holes. It just feels like too much time. So I'll do 9, knock it out in a couple hours. 18 holes takes at least 4 hours. So now, you know, a couple hours. But also, I'm gonna, hopefully in the next couple of weeks, go pick up my hot rod that I haven't worked on in a long time. Hopefully put in a storage unit in my garage, and for an hour or two here or there, I'll tinker around on that thing. So just finding something where you can shut off the cell phone, put it aside, just focus on doing something you enjoy. Otherwise you'll burn out. Also, absolutely religious dating strategy. So for me, for many years, it was very consistently set on Saturday night. So, and my team's conditioned: don't call me, don't text me, don't reach out to me Saturday night 5 p.m. till Monday morning, because I'm going to be date night, and then I'm going to be family, spiritual life Sunday. So you find that your spouse will get worn out too if you're not consistently having date night. You're just gone too much, or working too much, or what have you. So business, finance. So finance would fit your business stuff. You can see some of these goals. There's a width goal here. Go 24 wide by focusing on a minimum of 40 personal contacts per month. That's 10 per week. If that doesn't work, WIT means whatever it takes. Pre-plan each day, first thing at 6 a.m. Master the matchup with intense orchestration, daily accountability. 200,000 personal production, a minimum of 10 firsts per week, 4 FNAs, 2 to 4 IUL sales, 80 to 100,000 in rollovers a month. No debt, earn the ring, you know. Any questions? This is your brain on drugs. Any questions? Remember that old commercial?
Yes.
Yeah. All right, so what I would do is invest some more time in this on your own. And then if you want to draft a rough copy and give it to me, I'll be happy to look at it and give you suggestions for things you could do to improve it. between now and the end of the year. But you really wanna know exactly where you're headed and what your game plan is before January 1st. Alright? Okay, thanks everybody.